Today, we're going to talk about places that seem frozen in time. Years go by quickly, especially today, but some places seem to have been unable to keep up. There are quite a few spots in the world where time stood still, whether because of a natural disaster or a fleeting opportunity. Welcome to our channel, where we share with you all of the amazing places on this planet to put on your bucket list. If you're new here, we know you're going to like it here, and if you're a subscriber, thank you for coming back. Without further ado, here we go. Be prepared to be transported back to the past as we look at 10 places in the world that seem frozen in time. Number 10. Salton Riviera, California. With the word Riviera attached to its name, it's understandable if you thought this was a nice place to be. And it was, for a while, until dead fish started appearing by the thousands. How did that happen? Salton Sea, the basis of this Riviera, wasn't even supposed to exist. It used to be a desert sink, but flooding from the nearby Colorado River in 1905 filled the sink. 2 years later, the water settled and the former sink became a lake. It took another 50 years before people realized that there was a lake in the middle of the desert. From there, it became a popular tourist attraction. For a while, Salton Riviera enjoyed a constant flow of visitors. Homes and motels were erected to handle the number of people visiting, but in the 1970s, something awful happened. Thousands of dead fish floated onto the surface. That's not something you want to see when vacationing. Investigations reveal that agricultural runoff was what killed the fish. Because the Salton Sea doesn't drain, all of the chemicals and resulting algae pooled within the same body of water. This became a toxic environment for the fish, and their deaths only made things worse. The stench became unbearable and poisonous, causing people to flee and never return to the once bustling resort. Nowadays, all you'll see are the remains of buildings and houses that once saw a lot of visitors. Some camper vans were also left there, just rotting away to the elements, and they're all covered with sand and dried fish bones. Number 9. Two Guns, Arizona. Someone could write a movie about the rise and fall of this once busy tourist spot. Two Guns, known initially as Canyon Lodge, went from a modest trading post to an essential stop along the old Route 66. Previous owners Earl and Louise Cundiff, who originally bought the land from someone else before developing it into a busy highway stop, eventually signed a lease with Harry Miller. The lease allowed Miller to operate a business on site and generate more traffic. Miller eventually renamed the area Two Guns to coincide with his Wild West persona. For a while, business was good. He operated a zoo, ran tours down a gussied-up canyon, and kept the trading post stocked with goods for tourists and motorists. But then a string of unfortunate events happened. In March 1926, owner Earl Cundiff and Miller argued about the lease, and it got so heated that Miller ended up shooting Cundiff. Miller was acquitted of murder, but his zoo animals somehow punished him. 2 mountain lions and a Gila monster bit his arm. Then he got embroiled in a court battle against Louise Cundiff, which he lost. Though he eventually left Two Guns, the unfortunate events stayed. Route 66 was ultimately rerouted somewhere else before getting overshadowed by Interstate 40, drastically decreasing the traffic to Two Guns. Cundiff eventually sold the land to someone else, who revived the tourist attractions for a while until a fire decimated the place. It was again supposedly sold to actor Russell Crowe, who intended to use the area as a film set. Since then, nothing has happened to the site, leaving only the building ruins and graffiti. Number 8. Kolmanskap, Namibia. The Namib Desert is already a difficult place to live, but apparently that's not a problem as long as there are prospects of diamonds nearby. The Germans who settled here didn't realize that diamond mines aren't forever. Kolmanskap is an abandoned town from the early 1900s when the Germans controlled the area and diamond veins were nearby. Miners lived here despite the harsh desert climate, all because the income was excellent. They had everything they needed in this town: a hospital, a casino, a theater, and a ballroom, just to name a few. But then the diamonds ran out, and a new vein was located elsewhere. Diamond prices also plummeted after the First World War. This drop in income made the German miners realize they were no longer getting paid enough to live in such scorching temperatures. They packed their bags and moved elsewhere, leaving a once busy town empty. Today, you'll see these houses partially submerged in sand. The town was abandoned in the mid-50s, so the desert has had some time to reclaim the area. But for the parts that are still accessible, you'll see perfectly preserved houses with their previous residents' belongings still intact. Number 7. Krakow, Italy. A settlement built on a 1,312-foot high cliff, Krakow was only recently abandoned. The area's been inhabited since the 6th century, but it was only in the 1960s when its villagers moved away. After all, being on a cliff while in an active earthquake zone isn't a good idea. However, Krakow was a crowded area during its heyday, with 4 plazas and multiple churches. The town also had its share of civil strife since the 18th century, and a plague even struck them once. Nevertheless, the people of Krakow preserved and continued their agricultural and religious lifestyle. By 1910, scientists realized the town was in danger of landslides because of the weakening clay underneath. By 1963, over 1,800 inhabitants were evacuated to a nearby valley. In 1972, another flooding eliminated any chances of reintroducing the villagers back to Krakow. And after an earthquake in 1980, the entire village was abandoned. Nowadays, the village is a popular tourist destination. It also served as the setting for a few movies, including Quantum of Solace. Number 6. Hashima Island, Japan. Once a thriving coal mining island, Japan's Hashima Island is now a 16-acre abandoned site, about 8 miles away from Nagasaki. It was once home to over 5,000 people, and they even enjoyed a direct train line to and from Nagasaki. Today, it's just a bunch of empty housing and amenities. Coal mining on the island was first established in 1887, and it wasn't until 1974 that people left due to the depletion of the coal reserves. During its active days, miners gathered the coal via an undersea mine, while human settlements continued to sprout all over the island. It even had a seawall to protect the settlement from waves during a typhoon. Hashima Island wasn't without its share of controversies, however. From the 1930s until the end of the Second World War, the mines used Korean and Chinese prisoners of war as forced laborers. Most of these laborers died due to harsh conditions and malnutrition, a history that almost excluded the island from the UNESCO World Heritage Site selection list. It wasn't until 2009 that the island reopened for public access again. Before reopening, a few changes had to be made for tourists, including a visitor walkway and a pier for tourist landings. Certain areas were also closed off due to safety concerns of the aging buildings, and if you want to visit Hashima Island, make sure you do so during one of the 160 days a year it's open. Number 5. Tyneham, England. If you only had 30 days to leave your home to help with the war effort, you'd also leave most of your belongings behind, especially when the government promised you your home back after the war. That's basically what happened to the residents of Tyneham, a small village near Dorset, England. The government asked them to leave their homes behind so they could use the area as a tank firing range, promising to return the village once the war was over. But when the war did finish, the villagers didn't get their homes back. Britain's Ministry of Defense decided to keep the area, which they still do. As a result, you have the ruins of an entire village suddenly lost to time. Rows of cottages now stand roofless after spending so many years without its inhabitants. Warbarrow Bay, which used to see some fishing activity, albeit a declining one, is now eerily quiet. The old school and church have been renovated to serve as a reminder of what life used to be, complete with exhibition boards and a recreated classroom. Nowadays, it's a tourist attraction, but only on weekends and public holidays. The MOD still has several parts of the village as a live firing range and are off limits, so visitors must stay on paths marked with yellow posts. Number 4. Varosha Beach Resort, Cyprus. Imagine a glamorous resort with facilities for 39,000 residents and 700,000 annual visitors. You're probably picturing several high-rise hotels, apartments, and sprawling shopping complexes. People would come and go while residents enjoyed their beachside life. That's how it was for Varosha Beach Resort in Cyprus before Turkey seized the area in 1974. During a hurried evacuation, people left most of their belongings as they were. They didn't even have enough time to pack. Some even abruptly stopped whatever they were doing and left without cleaning up. For decades, Varosha sat empty and abandoned. Everything was left to the elements, and eventually, nature took over. Buildings decayed, vehicles rotted, and plants and weeds grew on just about any surface, all because it was fenced away from the world. There have been talks of reopening the area, but controversies surround the plan. Urban explorers who could enter the site photographed the abandoned beach resort. Their photos show a community where time stood still. Dining tables set, cars parked casually, and personal effects lying around the house. It's as if the buildings are waiting for their former occupants to return several decades later. Number 3. Bielitz-Heilstätten Hospital, Germany. It's been nearly 30 years since the Bielitz-Heilstätten Hospital in Germany was closed and abandoned. Even though it was active for 121 years, it was used as a military hospital during 2 world wars, and the Soviet military occupied the building for 50 years. Most of the building is still disused today, though some parts have been reclaimed for research. Exploring this empty hospital shows images of what used to look grand and elegant, now reduced to a decaying, graffitied state. Some rooms have random furniture left in place, such as pianos, chairs, and bed frames. But for most rooms, it's nothing but time and emptiness. Nowadays, you can explore parts of the hospital grounds for free, while some areas require a paid ticket. But even with guided tours and paid tickets, many of the hospital's buildings are still off-limits to visitors. Number 2. Pompeii. No discussion about places frozen in time is complete without a mention of Pompeii. After the nearby Mount Vesuvius erupted, Pompeii was immediately buried in time and 20 feet of volcanic ash. As a result, the very last moments of Pompeii's inhabitants were preserved underneath the ash. Archaeologists today are still finding discoveries about what life was like in Pompeii. Areas that researchers have already dug out are open for the public to see. Even though it's not a complete picture of Pompeii, it's fascinating to see the preserved remnants of a city thousands of years ago. Number 1. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. If Pompeii is the quintessential place that froze in time, Oradour-sur-Glane in France is a chilling reminder of the atrocities of World War II. Now a permanent museum, Oradour-sur-Glane used to be a village of over 600 people. These people were massacred and the village was looted and burned. After the war, President Charles de Gaulle ordered that the ruins be kept as is to serve as a memorial and a museum. The village was eventually rebuilt, now located northwest of the original site. Visitors to the memorial will see the burned ruins of the old village, along with varied clocks and watches that stopped when the fires were burning. There are even the remains of a car belonging to a doctor who arrived right as the villagers were being ordered to gather before the massacre. The car is still in the same spot it was parked back in 1944. It's unfortunate how these places became hollow shells of what they used to be. Once a bustling area, now they're a reminder of the lives that used to exist. Not only do they serve as a history lesson, but they are also a warning of nature's veracity. Have you seen any of these places, or perhaps you've been to one that isn't on the list? Comment below, and if you found this video interesting, you're definitely going to love this other video from our channel. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. See you soon, and until then, bon voyage!